It was raining like the sky had a grudge that day. I remember it so clearly because I'd triple-checked the forecast the night before, and it said sunny with scattered clouds. Lies. All lies. And of course, I believed it like a fool. Woke up late, forgot to charge my phone, spilled half my cereal trying to eat and check emails at the same time. By the time I left my apartment, I was already 10 minutes behind and soaked from the knees down. My job wasn't glamorous. I worked as an assistant at a mid-sized marketing firm on the 5th floor of a building that smelled like burnt printer ink and expired ambition. My boss, Karen, yes, actually Karen, was the kind of manager who treated punctuality like religion. If you were early, you were on time. If you were on time, you were late. And if you were late, you were basically a criminal. So when I finally reached the building and rushed past the front desk, holding my limp umbrella like a defeated flag, I already knew I was in for it. 7 minutes late. That's all it was. 7. But the second I stepped off the elevator and walked into the office, she was standing there, like a poorly dressed gargoyle guarding the gates of hell. Well, well, she said, arms folded, eyes scanning my soggy blazer like it was a biohazard. Nice of you to join us. I gave her the tightest smile I could manage without biting through my own cheek. Train delay. And, a coffee explosion. Karen didn't smile. Karen never smiled unless someone was being humiliated. She looked around the room just to make sure we had an audience and said, "Can I see you in my office?" Now here's the thing. I was good at my job. Really good. I hit my deadlines. I dealt with difficult clients. I cleaned up after her countless mistakes and never asked for credit. But none of that mattered to Karen. What mattered was control. And when people like that see you falter, even for a moment, they pounce. Her office was cold, both literally and emotionally. She closed the door, sat down behind her desk, and said, "You've been slipping lately." I blinked. "What?" "Your attitude, your time management, and frankly, your energy." I didn't know what to say. My energy? Karen, I'm going to stop you right there, she said, raising a perfectly manicured hand. "This isn't working anymore. We're letting you go, effective immediately." I stared at her. I laughed. It just slipped out. Because for a second I thought she was joking. Who fires someone for being 7 minutes late and spilling coffee? But no, she was serious. She slid a manila envelope across the desk. Inside, one paycheck, one severance sheet, and one very generic thank you for your service letter. "Security will walk you out," she said, not even making eye contact. And just like that, I was unemployed. I walked out in a haze. The elevator ride down felt like a free fall. I passed by coworkers who stared at their screens a little too hard, pretending not to see me. No one said goodbye. No one blinked. By the time I reached the front of the building, the rain had stopped. Of course it had. I stood there, holding the envelope like a joke I didn't get, wondering what just happened. And then I walked. I didn't go home. I didn't check job boards. I just walked the city streets like they might offer answers. And somewhere between 7th and 8th Avenue, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from someone I hadn't talked to in a long time. I stared at the screen for a second. Then I hit play. "Hey, it's Leo. I heard through the grapevine you might be looking for something new. I've got a situation, business deal. Could be a long shot, but I thought of you first. Call me back." At the time, I had no idea how important that call would be, how that one message would flip my world upside down. But I did know one thing, even then. Karen had made a mistake, and soon she was going to find out just how big it was. I didn't call Leo back right away. I wandered for another 20 blocks first, because that's what you do when your entire sense of identity just got crumpled like a fast food receipt. I stopped at a food truck, bought a greasy bagel I didn't want, and sat on a bench outside Bryant Park watching pigeons fight like it was a pay-per-view event. When I finally called him, Leo answered on the first ring. "I was starting to think you'd ghost me." "Sorry," I said. "I just got fired for being late, so I'm adjusting." There was a pause. Then, "Wow, Karen? Of course." "Classic," he said, and I could almost hear the smirk. "Well, maybe the universe finally cleared your schedule. You free to talk in person?" That's how I found myself in a coffee shop downtown, one that didn't smell like burnt hope and toner. Leo was already at the back table, a laptop open, suit jacket slung over the chair like he lived there. He looked richer. I mean that literally. The man had investment written all over him now, in bold font and expensive cologne. Still taking your coffee black with a side of vengeance? He asked as I sat down. Extra vengeance, please. He slid over a cup. So what's the deal? I asked. Leo leaned in. I'm building a team. Private investment, real estate and asset flipping. We've got a few silent partners, and we're looking for someone who actually understands operations, admin, and communication. Someone like you. I blinked. You want me to join a real estate firm? Not a firm, he corrected. A syndicate. We pool funds, scout properties, buy undervalued buildings, and either flip or lease. You'd be our operations point. Oversight, logistics, managing the back end. I hesitated. You remember I don't have a real estate license, right? Leo smiled. We've got lawyers for that. I need someone who can manage chaos. You were doing that in Karen's office for peanuts. I'm offering equity and a salary that doesn't insult you. Now, you might think this is where I say I leapt at the chance and suddenly became a millionaire. But no. I told him I'd think about it. Because, trauma brain. I had just been fired 3 hours ago, and I was still emotionally dripping with rain and rejection. But Leo wasn't done. He pulled up a listing on his laptop. It was a building, 5 floors, office spaces, corner location, great bones. Recognize it? He asked. I looked closer. It was Karen's building. The one I had just been walked out of. I laughed out loud. You're kidding. Nope, Leo said. The current owner's retiring. Wants out fast. Clean deal. And guess what? We're one of 3 bidders. I stared at him. And you want me to help buy the building my ex-boss rents from? Leo shrugged. She doesn't own it. She just leases. Someone's gonna buy it. Why not us? Now look, I'm not a petty person. Okay, I'm a little petty, but this wasn't about revenge. This was about power. About never being the one holding the coffee and the severance envelope again. I leaned back, sipped the coffee, and said, "What's the next step?" He grinned. Due diligence. The next 48 hours were a blur of spreadsheets, late-night Zoom calls with legal teams, and walking through buildings with blueprints and lattes in hand. Leo's team was sharp, fast, and unusually polite. I kept waiting for someone to question why I was there. Why the girl who got fired for being 7 minutes late was suddenly helping vet a $12 million purchase. No one did. Because I wasn't just a helper. I was a partner. By the 3rd day, I knew the building's plumbing better than I knew my own apartments. I knew which tenants always paid late, which units had mold, and which office Karen had been under leasing for years without permission. It was during one of those walkthroughs that I found myself standing in the lobby, staring up at the floor I used to work on, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a comeback. This was a rewrite. Karen thought she fired me, but in a few days, I'd be signing papers that would put her lease under my terms. Talk about a plot twist. We submitted our offer the next morning. Clean, fast close, no financing needed. The seller, a quiet older man with suspenders and a kind smile, liked us immediately. He liked our story. He liked that we weren't a faceless hedge fund. He especially liked that I used to work in the building. Bet you know which pipes rattle and which tenants complain too much, he chuckled. Oh, I said, I know everything. And just like that, we were moved to the top of the list. By the end of the week, our offer was accepted. No back and forth, no drama, just a handshake, a contract, and a quiet nod from fate. I was about to own the building that once kicked me out, and I wasn't even late to the signing. The signing happened on a Thursday, which felt poetically perfect because Thursdays used to be my worst days at the firm. That was when Karen scheduled all her morale meetings, which were really just cleverly disguised power trips where she'd compliment herself, then toss passive-aggressive grenades at everyone else in the room. But this Thursday, different vibe entirely. Leo and I walked into the title office like 2 people who knew exactly how far they'd come. The receptionist offered us coffee, and I didn't spill a drop this time. Progress. The seller, Mr. Callahan, was already there, still in those signature suspenders, and when he saw me, he smiled like we were old friends. You sure you're ready for this? He asked, signing the first of many pages. I smiled back. More than ready. The closing process took about 90 minutes. With so many signatures, my hand started cramping halfway through. Leo cracked a joke about needing a hand massage clause in the contract. I told him I'd invoice him hourly. Mr. Callahan just chuckled and shook his head like he was passing the torch to the next generation of lovable chaos. And then it was done. We were owners. Officially. I had a title, a contract, and a key. A literal key. To the front door of the building where 1 week earlier I had been escorted out with soggy pants and a crumpled ego. Talk about a full circle moment. As soon as we stepped outside, Leo raised his hand for a high five. I gave him one, then immediately turned to him and said, "Okay, so can I go inside now?" He laughed. "You don't want to celebrate first?" "Nope," I said. "I want to walk through that lobby and not have anyone question why I'm there." He handed me the key. "Then go show 'em." The front desk security guy blinked twice when he saw me walk in. "Weren't you just?" "Yep," I said. "But today, I'm not here to work. I'm here to inspect my property." He sat back, eyes wide, then slowly nodded. "Wow. Okay, go on up." And just like that, I was walking through the building as its co-owner. The elevator ride to the 5th floor was delicious. I stood in the same corner I always did, except now I didn't feel invisible. I felt electric, like I was buzzing with some kind of secret power. When the doors opened, I stepped out and just stood there for a moment. Same carpet, same flickering fluorescent light, same fake fern in the corner, but everything felt different because I wasn't on the clock anymore. I owned the clock. Karen's office door was closed. Good. I wasn't ready to do the whole boss reveal just yet. There were lease agreements to review, tenant memos to update, and, let's be honest, a little emotional preparation required. So I walked down the hall and peeked through the glass of my old workspace. There was a new assistant in my chair, headphones in. Probably blissfully unaware that her job used to belong to the woman currently holding a key to the building's electrical room. I smiled. I didn't envy her. But I didn't hate her either. She was just another piece of the machine. Like I used to be. Before I found the off switch. Back downstairs, Leo was waiting for me outside with 2 paper bags and a grin. "Celebration lunch. I got your favorite. Spicy tofu banh mi and a side of petty triumph." You know me too well. We sat on a bench across the street from the building, unwrapping our sandwiches like 2 victorious nerds. "So what's next?" I asked, mouth half full. "Now," he said, "we go over tenant contracts. We renegotiate the lease with Karen's firm and we let her know the terms are changing." I raised an eyebrow. "You want me to be there for that?" Leo nodded. "You should be there for that." I hesitated for a second, and then I grinned. "Oh, I'm absolutely going to be there for that." The following Monday, we scheduled the first round of tenant meetings, just simple walkthroughs, status checks, and informal sit-downs. Karen was last on the list, intentionally. She got the email invite like everyone else. "Please join us for your leaseholder meeting with new building management." She replied with one word, "Approved." No clue what was coming. No idea she was about to walk into the same conference room where she used to scold me for using too many commas in memos. I picked out my outfit like it was battle armor. Navy blazer, simple black top, no-nonsense shoes. Not flashy, just formidable. At 3 p.m. sharp, she walked in and froze. Her eyes flicked from Leo to me, then back again. "What is she doing here?" she asked. Leo didn't miss a beat. "She's part of the ownership team. You're meeting with both of us." Karen laughed, like a full-on sitcom-style laugh. "That's cute," she said. "What, she's your assistant now?" I leaned forward, locked eyes with her, and said, "No, Karen, I'm your landlord." Silence. Delicious, heavy silence. She blinked once, twice, then sat down, slowly, like she wasn't sure gravity was still working properly. I opened the lease file and slid it across the table. "Let's talk about your new terms." I don't think I'll ever forget the exact sound Karen made when I said, "I'm your landlord." It was somewhere between a scoff and a sneeze, like her ego didn't know whether to reject the reality or just short-circuit entirely. She stared at the lease file in front of her like I had just handed her a binder full of nuclear codes. Her fingers hovered over the cover, but didn't open it. She was stalling. Leo, bless him, sat back and said nothing. This was my moment, and he knew it. I folded my hands calmly and smiled. "The building changed hands last week. Your lease was due for renewal anyway, so we figured it was time to reevaluate a few things." Karen finally found her voice. "You're joking." I leaned forward, deadpan. "Do I look like I'm joking?" She looked at Leo, searching for backup. "This is a stunt, right? She's not seriously in charge of this building." Leo shrugged. You're welcome to check the public records. We had filed everything the day before. As of 2:14 p.m. yesterday, I was listed as a managing partner and co-owner of the LLC that now controlled the property. My name was right there. Legal, permanent, undeniable. Karen blinked rapidly, trying to catch up. You how? You don't have money. You were an assistant. And there it was. The thing she couldn't reconcile. How could the person she used to bark at for printing too slowly suddenly be holding the deed to her office? I didn't give her the satisfaction of a full explanation. You underestimated me, Karen. It happens. She finally opened the lease folder, flipping through the updated terms with the kind of forced casualness people use when reading a restaurant menu they can't afford. Her eyes stopped on the new rent line. You're raising my rent? Correct, I said. Market value. You've been underpaying for years because the previous owner never updated your rate. Karen set the folder down. I have a contract, I nodded, which expires in 2 weeks. After that, you're either on the new lease or you find another office. Leo finally chimed in. You'll have first right of renewal, of course, but it's a new chapter, new management, new standards. Karen crossed her arms. This is personal. You're trying to punish me. I looked her straight in the eye. Karen, if I wanted to punish you, I'd have walked in here with movers and an eviction notice. This is me being professional, which is more than I can say for how you treated me. She said nothing, for once, and I let the silence stretch, let her sit in it. You could almost hear her brain ticking like a hot engine, trying to figure out her next move. Finally, she stood up. I'll have my lawyer review it. Please do, I said. As she walked to the door, she turned back and added, You're not the same person you were a week ago. I smiled. You're right, I'm not. And you know what? That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. The door clicked shut behind her. Leo let out a low whistle. You didn't even flinch. I've flinched enough in that office for a lifetime, I said. We high-fived again. This one felt different. Not just celebratory, but final, like closing a chapter so well it deserves a book deal. Over the next few days, Karen's lawyer sent back questions, some legitimate, some desperate, but none that changed the outcome. The lease terms stood. She agreed, begrudgingly. She even sent an email thanking us for the professional approach. I printed that email, framed it. It now sits in my home office under a little brass plaque that says, From Severance to Signatures. But I didn't stop there. No. You see, there's something liberating about realizing you don't have to play by someone else's rulebook anymore. With Karen's lease settled, I started calling the other tenants. Doctors, designers, a startup or two. People who had been working in the building for years and never once met the owners. I sat down with each of them, asked what they needed, what wasn't working, what could be better. Because ownership isn't just about power, it's about responsibility. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was chasing someone else's approval. I was building something, on my terms. That week, I found an old photo on my phone, a blurry snapshot from my first day at Karen's office years ago. I looked young, nervous, wearing a blazer 2 sizes too big and clutching a notepad like it was a lifeline. I remember that version of me. I loved her. She survived, but she's not in charge anymore. Now, I'm not just in the room. I own the room, and that's a feeling no one can take from me. There's a moment, right after everything changes, where your brain doesn't know whether to celebrate or panic. That's where I lived for the next few days. Sure, I was a building owner now. Sure, Karen was legally under my lease. But imposter syndrome? Oh, it showed up like it had a key to my apartment and opinions about my posture. I kept waiting for someone to pull the plug to say, wait, sorry, we made a mistake. You were supposed to be fired and forgotten, not featured in a real estate newsletter. Because yes, Leo submitted our story to a mid-tier real estate blog. And yes, they published it. Former assistant becomes landlord of former boss was the headline. It got shared, a lot. And while the attention was mostly positive, Karen did not take it well. I got the email late at night, one sentence. You'll regret making this public. I stared at it, then chuckled out loud. Not even capital letters. Classic Karen. All fury, no punctuation. Leo wanted to ignore it, but I felt something bubble up in me. Something I hadn't felt in a while. Confidence. So I replied with one line. Then you really haven't been paying attention. The building itself, though, that's where the real growth happened. Turns out the place was being held together by charm and duct tape. Leo's team had contractors ready, but I made sure I was there, boots on the floor, clipboard in hand. Not because I didn't trust them, but because I wanted to know everything. I learned what asbestos smells like when you accidentally drill into it. Hint, don't. I learned what a cracked boiler sounds like at 4 a.m., like the building's trying to scream. And I learned that plumbers are the most honest people on the planet, as long as you keep coffee flowing. The tenants started to notice me, not as the new owner, but as a real human. One of them, Dr. Ramirez, who ran a dental office on the third floor, stopped me in the hallway. "You fixed the heat," she said like it was magic. "I did," I replied, holding my burnt thumb up from when I tried to reset the fuse box, with minimal electrocution. She laughed and handed me a thank you card. Inside, a $50 coffee shop gift card and a note that said, "First landlord I've seen walk the halls in 10 years. Don't disappear." I didn't plan to. I actually liked being here, fixing things, being seen. And then, just when the dust started to settle, Karen pulled her next move. I got a notice from her attorney, a counter-proposal. She wanted to buy the space she occupied, not rent it. Buy it. Leo and I read the email at the same time. "Should we be flattered?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow, or concerned. The offer was serious, real money, slightly above market, and clearly intended to do one thing: push me out. If she owned the space, she'd never have to answer to me again. No more lease renewals, no more awkward meetings, just permanent separation. I could see why it was tempting. Take the money, cash out, and let her build her little kingdom without me looking over her shoulder. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was about more than square footage. It was about rewriting the narrative. She wanted to undo what had happened, to go back to being the one in charge. I sat with it for a full day, talked it through with Leo, made a pros and cons list like a total nerd, even asked Dr. Ramirez, who said, "I wouldn't sell her a closet, but that's just me." In the end, it wasn't the money that made my decision. It was the memory of her voice telling me I was slipping, that my energy wasn't enough. It was every time she took credit for my work, every time she rolled her eyes when I had a suggestion, every time she made me feel small. I emailed her attorney back. "We respectfully decline the offer. The space is not for sale." 1 hour later, Karen emailed me directly. "This is petty." And again, I replied with one line. "No, Karen. This is business." She didn't take it well. Within a week, she was cold in the halls, slamming doors, whispering to her staff whenever I passed by like we were in a bad episode of The Office. I half expected a prank war to start, or at least a memo in Comic Sans. But I didn't engage, because the truth is, when you own the building, you don't have to win the argument. You are the argument. And Karen, she could keep whispering, because every time she walked through those doors, every time she clicked on her lights, every time she took a breath under that roof, she was paying me. The thing no one tells you about rising from the ashes is that eventually, you start to enjoy the view. The building began to feel like mine, not just on paper, not just through rent checks, but in the little things. Tenants waving when I passed, the new hallway lighting I approved, the fresh coat of paint in the lobby that no one asked for but everyone noticed. It was like the space was shedding its past. And I was too. Even Karen's tantrums started to lose their sting. She still stomped around like a passive-aggressive peacock, but after the power siphoning scandal, she kept her volume low and her door mostly closed. I knew she was waiting for a mistake, a loophole, a way back to the top of the food chain. But I wasn't interested in playing defense anymore. I had other plans. It started with an idea over coffee. Leo and I were reviewing building expenses when I casually asked, "What's the most profitable use of that corner office space on the second floor?" He looked up. "That the one that used to be an acupuncture studio?" "Yup, empty for 6 months." He tilted his head. "Why?" I said slowly, "I want to open a co-working lounge." Leo blinked. "Seriously? Why not? The market's shifting. People need hybrid spaces. And I've got 2 different tenants asking about part-time offices already." Leo leaned back, processing. "You really want to go from landlord to operator?" "I want to go from owner to creator." "Big difference." He grinned. "All right then, let's design the coolest little empire on this block." Within 3 weeks, we were in full build-out mode. Exposed brick, sleek desks, soundproof phone booths, a wall of plants because why not? Oxygen is branding now. I even hired a muralist to paint a bright abstract piece across the far wall with the words, "You belong here." And I meant it. It wasn't just a business move, it was a reclaiming, a way to inject something of me into the literal structure. The co-working space was open by the following month. It filled up faster than we expected. Designers, consultants, freelance accountants, even a podcast duo who insisted on recording in the sound booth twice a week. But the best part? Karen had to walk past it every single morning. And every time she did, I watched her glance through the glass at the community I'd built. Happy people, productive people, people choosing to work in a space I made. And she hated it. Then came the broker. He showed up one Thursday afternoon with slick hair and a smile full of dollar signs. "I represent a client interested in acquiring the property," he said, handing me a very thick envelope with very glossy paper inside. Leo skimmed it while sipping an espresso. I raised an eyebrow. "You don't even want to know the asking price?" Broker guy smiled wider. "We're not here to ask. We're here to offer." Inside the folder was a full cash proposal. No financing, no contingencies, just a pile of money with our name on it and a closing timeline of less than 30 days. "Who's the buyer?" I asked. The broker shrugged. "Confidential. All I can say is it's someone who's very familiar with the building." I looked at Leo. He looked at me. And we said it at the same time. Karen. It was textbook Karen. Don't fight the game. Buy the board. If she couldn't bully us with contracts or corner us with lawsuits, she'd try to simply buy the building out from under us. Cut the check, reclaim control, and pretend none of this ever happened. We brought the offer to our attorney. "It's legal," she said. "Aggressive, but legal. If you accept, you'll make a solid profit." "But if we decline?" I asked. "She'll likely push back harder." Leo and I sat in the conference room for nearly an hour without speaking. The offer was good. More than good. But something about it didn't sit right. "This isn't a business offer," I finally said. "It's a pride offer." Leo nodded slowly. "She doesn't want the building. She wants the narrative. She wants to be the one who bought it back. And erase us in the process." Silence. Then Leo smiled. "So we counter. We drafted a new proposal. Same building, same price. But instead of selling it outright, we offered a partial buy-in. She could acquire a 20% minority stake. She'd be a partner under us. A seat at the table, but not the head. Leo clicked send. We waited. 2 days passed. Then came her reply. One line. "Not interested in charity." No counter, no disrejection. And that's when I realized I had won. Not because she didn't buy the building, but because she couldn't. Her ego wouldn't let her. Karen didn't want to invest. She wanted to erase. And as long as I stayed, as long as my name remained on the deed and my mural stood on that wall, she'd never get the clean slate she craved. She'd have to wake up every day, walk into my building, and breathe my air. And that was something money couldn't buy. The thing no one tells you about rising from the ashes is that eventually you start to enjoy the view. The building began to feel like mine, not just on paper, not just through rent checks, but in the little things. Tenants waving when I passed, the new hallway lighting I approved, the fresh coat of paint in the lobby that no one asked for but everyone noticed. It was like the space was shedding its past. And I was too. Even Karen's tantrums started to lose their sting. She still stomped around like a passive-aggressive peacock, but after the power siphoning scandal, she kept her volume low and her door mostly closed. I knew she was waiting for a mistake, a loophole, a way back to the top of the food chain. But I wasn't interested in playing defense anymore. I had other plans. It started with an idea over coffee. Leo and I were reviewing building expenses when I casually asked, "What's the most profitable use of that corner office space on the second floor?" He looked up. "That the one that used to be an acupuncture studio?" "Yup. Empty for 6 months." He tilted his head. "Why?" I said slowly, "I want to open a co-working lounge." Leo blinked. "Seriously. Why not? The market's shifting. People need hybrid spaces, and I've got 2 different tenants asking about part-time offices already." Leo leaned back, processing. "You really want to go from landlord to operator?" "I want to go from owner to creator. Big difference." He grinned. "All right then, Let's design the coolest little empire on this block. Within 3 weeks, we were in full build-out mode. Exposed brick, sleek desks, soundproof phone booths, a wall of plants because, why not? Oxygen is branding now. I even hired a muralist to paint a bright abstract piece across the far wall with the words, "You belong here." And I meant it. It wasn't just a business move. It was a reclaiming, a way to inject something of me into the literal structure. The co-working space was open by the following month. It filled up faster than we expected. Designers, consultants, freelance accountants, even a podcast duo who insisted on recording in the sound booth twice a week. But the best part? Karen had to walk past it every single morning. And every time she did, I watched her glance through the glass at the community I'd built. Happy people, productive people, people choosing to work in a space I made. And she hated it. Then came the broker. He showed up one Thursday afternoon with slick hair and a smile full of dollar signs. "I represent a client interested in acquiring the property," he said, handing me a very thick envelope with very glossy paper inside. Leo skimmed it while sipping an espresso. I raised an eyebrow. "You don't even want to know the asking price?" Broker guy smiled wider. "We're not here to ask. We're here to offer." Inside the folder was a full cash proposal. No financing, no contingencies, just a pile of money with our name on it and a closing timeline of less than 30 days. "Who's the buyer?" I asked. The broker shrugged. "Confidential. All I can say is it's someone who's very familiar with the building." I looked at Leo. He looked at me. And we said it at the same time. "Karen. It was textbook Karen. Don't fight the game. Buy the board." If she couldn't bully us with contracts or corner us with lawsuits, she'd try to simply buy the building out from under us. Cut the check, reclaim control, and pretend none of this ever happened. We brought the offer to our attorney. "It's legal," she said. "Aggressive, but legal. If you accept, you'll make a solid profit." "But if we decline?" I asked. "She'll likely push back harder." Leo and I sat in the conference room for nearly an hour without speaking. The offer was good, more than good, but something about it didn't sit right. "This isn't a business offer," I finally said. "It's a pride offer." Leo nodded slowly. "She doesn't want the building. She wants the narrative. She wants to be the one who bought it back and erase us in the process." Silence. Then Leo smiled. "So, we counter. We drafted a new proposal. Same building, same price. But instead of selling it outright, we offered a partial buy-in. She could acquire a 20% minority stake. She'd be a partner under us. A seat at the table, but not the head." Leo clicked send. We waited. 2 days passed. Then came her reply. One line. "Not interested in charity. No counter. No thank you. Just rejection." And that's when I realized I had won. Not because she didn't buy the building, but because she couldn't. Her ego wouldn't let her. Karen didn't want to invest. She wanted to erase. And as long as I stayed, as long as my name remained on the deed and my mural stood on that wall, she'd never get the clean slate she craved. She'd have to wake up every day, walk into my building, and breathe my air. And that was something money couldn't buy. By now, walking through the building felt like slipping into a perfectly worn hoodie. Familiar, comforting, mine. Even the elevator ding had become a kind of theme music. I wasn't just managing floors and rent rolls. I was orchestrating something bigger. Culture. It showed in the small things. Tenants who used to avoid eye contact now stopped to chat. One of the copywriters from the third floor brought her dog in once. And when I didn't say a word got around that I was the cool kind of landlord. Karen, of course, didn't bring dogs. Just attitude. And lately, that had been intensifying. I noticed it in how her team walked a little tenser, how her assistant, Sasha, seemed more anxious, more flustered. I caught her once in the lobby looking like she wanted to cry over a coffee order that had gone wrong. I offered her a spare muffin from the cart and said, "She's not worth the stress." Sasha whispered, "Tell that to my inbox." Something was shifting, and it wasn't just the staff. Karen herself was cracking. It started subtly, missed payments that were usually auto-debited. Then came the noise complaints from Suite 505 next door. "She's screaming at her team again," they said. "Can you do something?" Technically, no. Morally? Maybe. I scheduled a casual check-in. "Just a tenant relations walkthrough," I told Leo. He smirked. "You sure it's not a victory lap?" Same thing. I winked. I knocked on Karen's door at 10 a.m. sharp. It took her a full 30 seconds to open it, and when she did, she looked off. Hair a little too perfect. Smile a little too forced. "Didn't know we had a scheduled inspection," she said. "It's not an inspection," I said sweetly. "Just checking in. Got a few noise complaints and some issues with the shared thermostat." She waved her hand. "People are soft. It's an office, not a meditation retreat." "True," I said, "but tenants are tenants, and wellness is kind of trendy now." She huffed, muttered something about Gen Z being allergic to ambition, and let me peek around. The space was cold. Half the desks were empty. Her once buzzing marketing firm now sounded like a half-dead printer trying to clear its throat. After a minute, I turned to her. "Everything okay?" She narrowed her eyes. "Why wouldn't it be?" "No reason," I said. "Just seems quieter lately." Karen crossed her arms. "We had some staff turnover." I nodded. "Of course, natural in any business." But I already knew the truth. Sasha had told me, quietly in the elevator. They lost their biggest client. Budget's a mess. Karen's unraveling. Later that week, I got the proof. An email, meant for someone else, accidentally sent to me. Subject line, "Options if we can't make next quarter's rent." It was from Karen's finance lead. In the body, it listed possible emergency scenarios, including office consolidation and early exit negotiation. My eyes widened. Karen, Miss Unshakable, Queen of Control, was preparing to downsize. I didn't reply right away. I forwarded it to Leo. His reply was 3 words. "Holy shat, popcorn?" But I wasn't feeling smug. Not really. Because here's the thing about seeing someone like Karen fall apart. It doesn't always feel victorious. Sometimes it feels sad. Like watching an old lion lose her roar. She'd built something once. A company. A reputation. Even if it was sharp-edged and often cruel, it had been hers. Now, she was barely holding on. Still, business was business, and my job, ironically, was to protect her lease and my building. So I sent her a meeting request. Subject line, "Discussion on upcoming quarter." She responded in 5 minutes. "See you Tuesday." When she showed up, she looked exhausted. Still polished, still fierce, but hollowed out behind the eyes. We sat in the same room where she once fired me without blinking. Now I was the one opening the folder. "I received an internal message about your lease," I said. "I wanted to discuss possible options before anything escalates." Karen stared at me. Then slowly she said, "I don't need your pity." "This isn't pity," I said calmly. "This is due diligence. If you're struggling, we can explore temporary restructuring, short-term rent reduction, month-to-month pivot, but I need transparency." She exhaled, shaky and shallow. "I didn't plan for this," she muttered. "Most of us don't," I replied. "But you're not the first, and you won't be the last." There was a long pause, and then, her voice cracked, just barely. I thought I'd be unstoppable by now. That hit harder than I expected. I didn't say anything clever or smug. I just nodded. Because, yeah, I thought that too once. We came to an agreement. 3-month lease revision. Scaled rent. Exit clause review. It was professional, mutually beneficial. But when she left that room, she looked smaller. Like part of her had accepted that the chapter was ending. Not in fire, but in silence. And as I sat there, alone with the paperwork and the echo of her high heels fading down the hall, I felt something I hadn't expected. Closure. The real kind. Not the cinematic kind with slow claps and saxophones. Just the quiet relief of knowing I didn't need revenge. I had resolution. And in that room, I owned more than just the building. I owned my story. Spring rolled in quietly, no big announcement, just warmer mornings and the faint hum of life returning to the city. The building buzzed too. Bramble launched a new product. The podcasters signed a brand deal. Someone installed a smoothie bar in a utility closet and called it Wellness Fuel. I didn't even care. It smelled like hope. Karen's office? Still there, but downsized. She'd surrendered half her floor plan, moved her remaining staff into the east wing where the view was mostly of the parking lot. The conference room she used to parade through with heels clicking like a war drum now belonged to a therapist collective. They decorated it with soft lights, crystals, and an enormous ficus. Poetic, really. The same space where Karen once said, "Emotions are for lunch breaks," now hosted back-to-back sessions on setting healthy boundaries. Sasha, her former assistant, didn't follow the team to the smaller space. She emailed me one day. Subject line, "Would love to grab coffee, but on purpose this time." We met at the co-working cafe. She'd already ordered a lavender matcha, which felt aggressively Gen Z but somehow comforting. You look lighter, I told her. I sleep now, she grinned. No more crying in stairwells. I raised my cup to low cortisol and high standards. We clinked, quietly, with the kind of soft dignity you earn after surviving a toxic orbit. Karen, for her part, kept a low profile. She passed me in the halls like we were strangers, or worse, ghosts. She never caused new trouble, but the old energy still lingered. Until the letter. It arrived in a plain white envelope. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single page. You win, I was awful to you, and I hated how much I saw myself in you. That scared me. Take care of the building. I read it 3 times, not because I didn't believe it, but because I didn't expect her to say it. And that line, I hated how much I saw myself in you, stuck like static in my chest. Was it her way of saying I had what she used to, or what she never did? Either way, I didn't frame that letter. I folded it, put it in a drawer, and let it live there like a finished chapter. Because the truth is, I wasn't her. Not anymore. Not ever, really. The next week, Leo and I did something we'd talked about for months, but never prioritized. We held a building brunch. Yep, an actual brunch. Waffles, frittatas, real coffee, fake mimosas. It's still a business, after all. We opened the rooftop patio, hired a jazz guitarist, even passed out little name tags that said, "Your title here." It was corny and perfect. Everyone came. The therapists, the software kids, the accountant who never smiled. She smiled twice, we counted. Even Dr. Ramirez brought her teenage daughter, who promptly made a TikTok about how our landlord gives brunch, not trauma. I nearly wept. And then, unexpectedly, Karen showed up. Alone. No staff, no clipboard. Just her. She didn't make a speech. She didn't linger. But she walked through that brunch like someone who understood what it meant to stay standing, even after the lights dim. She gave me a nod, and for the first time in a long time, I nodded back. Not as a truce, not as forgiveness, but as an acknowledgement. We both survived the storm. Only one of us learned to dance in it. Later that day, Leo and I stood on the rooftop watching the sun stretch over the skyline. Think she'll move out soon? He asked. Eventually, I said. But it won't matter. He smiled. You're not even tempted to celebrate? I already did, I replied. I live here now. Celebration is the air I breathe. A soft breeze lifted my hair, carrying the sounds of laughter and rooftop music below. And I realized, this wasn't a revenge story. Not really. It was an origin story. And I wasn't the assistant anymore. I was the architect, the landlord, the main character, and no one could fire me from that. There's a strange kind of stillness that comes after you've built the life you once only fantasized about during your worst moments. You keep expecting a piano to fall out of the sky or the universe to pull some final prank. But instead, quiet. Not empty. Just settled. Peaceful. The building felt that way too. Even the creaky floorboards on the 3rd floor had a new rhythm, like they'd finally decided to cooperate. Or maybe I just stopped hearing them as complaints and started hearing them as character. I spent my mornings in the co-working cafe, laptop open, sipping the same oat milk latte from the same barista who now knew my name and my allergies. Tenants would drift in and out, and we'd exchange nods, jokes, occasional memes. Once, the therapist in Suite 210 handed me a little sticky note. It just said, "You're doing sacred work, even if it smells like printer toner." I stuck it to my monitor. It's still there. Karen eventually gave notice. Not with fireworks or flair, just a formal email with the subject line, "Intent to vacate end of quarter." No signature flourish, no threats, just clean lines. She left behind the Art Deco wall clock, 2 folding chairs, and a burnt-out scented candle that said "Power Vibes Only." It felt weirdly poetic. We converted the space within 2 weeks. The startup next door expanded into it without skipping a beat. They painted the walls yellow, installed beanbags, put up a whiteboard that said "No idea is too dumb" in Comic Sans. Karen would have hated it, which made me love it more. On my last walkthrough of her vacated suite, I stood by the window. Same view I once admired from her office during lunch breaks, back when I wasn't allowed to close the door behind me. Same skyline, but I wasn't on the outside anymore. I was the frame. I didn't need her approval. I didn't even need her apology. She'd already given me something better, permission to outgrow her, even if she didn't mean to. especially because she didn't mean to. I remember the day I got fired like it happened this morning. The elevator ride of shame, the way my coffee lid kept popping off, the sting of people avoiding eye contact as I left. But now? Now, I think about how that same elevator takes me to my office, where my name is on the plaque, where people look me in the eye, not because they have to, but because they want to. I own the floors I used to mop with anxiety. I write the rules I once got written up for breaking, and I'm no longer just surviving. I'm flourishing. Sometimes people ask if I ever want to sell. If the price is right, they say, you'd walk away with a fortune. Sure, maybe one day. But right now, no amount of money could replace this feeling of walking into a place that once broke me and knowing I rebuilt it better, of seeing my name on the deed, of hearing someone say, hey, that's her building. Because that's all I ever wanted. Not revenge, just recognition. And now I have it. In every creaky step, every fresh coat of paint, every smile in the hall. I didn't just buy a building, I bought my freedom. And it pays rent every single day.